Creator Eliza Phoenix, Chapter 10, Mystery Nanites. Summary: Peter takes matters into his own hands. Peter glances at the simple black bracelet sitting on the work table, and he tilts his head. It looked very similar to Tony's chest piece and Peter's own bracelet, which only meant that it was nanotechnology. He just didn't know who it was for. Tony was pretty uptight about making nanosuits for anyone other than himself and Peter, so it begged the question, whose suit was it? The teen picks up the bracelet and Tony looks up from his own suit. This is a new suit, right? Who is it for? Tony actually squirmed in his seat. Not only that, but he looked uncertain. Both sent Peter's head spinning. The engineer was always proud, confident about his work, to the point where he was already working on a new upgrade just after sending one of the Avengers off with the new one. Everyone barely had enough time to test the new stuff before Tony was throwing something else at them. All but Steven, of course. He didn't have anything for Tony to upgrade, and the engineer constantly complained that the sorcerer's robe weren't adequate enough to protect. Oh. Peter smiles at his father, and Tony raises an eyebrow. It's for Mom, isn't it? Brown eyes widen, and the owner coughs. I was bored. It's only going to collect dust. The teen frowns. You don't know that. Tony ignores him and turns back to his nanotech suit, leaving Peter to study the bracelet. He knew the man wouldn't give it to Steven under the impression that it would be rejected, so Peter would take it upon himself to do it for him. He might get yelled at later, but it would be worth it. He was fairly certain Steven would be grateful that Tony thought of his safety, so he slipped it into his pockets while his father was focused on making adjustment to the bleeding edges. I'm gonna make myself a couple of sandwich. Want one? Turkey. Peter bounds out of the lab and rides the elevator up to the floor he shares with his parents and finds Steven in the kitchen making sandwiches. Either he was going to force feed his family, Peter and Tony has been on the lab all day, or Friday told him that Peter was coming up to do just that. The teen's stomach growls loudly as he slides onto a stool across the sorcerer, and the elder man chuckles at the sound. I was told you were coming up to make yourself lunch. I figured I would make sure it wasn't just a bag of chips. The sorcerer pushes aside completed turkey sandwich and starts on a couple of roast beef for Peter. New project or upgrades? Oh, just some repairs and upgrades. Speaking of new projects, Peter pulls the nanotech bracelet out of his pockets and holds it out to Steven, who regards it curiously. What's this? Dad has no idea I'm giving this to you, but I know he won't do it himself, so I'm doing you both a favor. Steven raises an eyebrow as he takes the offered bracelet and puts it on. That doesn't answer my question. Peter leans across the countertop, taps on the surface in experimentation. In response, the nanites cover the sorcerer's body in a suit looking a cross between Tony and Peter's form. It was dark blue, almost black, had the flexibility of Peter's suit and the projection of Tony's suit. Most importantly, it was form-fitting. The hands weren't bulky, so Steven could use his slingling, and there were small grips around his shoulders for the cloak. Of course, the symbol of Eye of Agamotto was displayed on the chest, and Peter wondered if Tony designed the suit to actually place the relic in place of the symbol. Probably. The cloak itself noticed its master's new suit and settled itself on his shoulder, rather happily. Steven's mask crawled away, and he stared down at himself for a few moments before looking back at Peter. "He made me a suit." The man's voice cracks with suppressed emotions. "Yeah, mostly for protection. He's always complaining about your robe not being enough, and it looks like he's made it so that one of us can activate it or deactivate it, like ours in case of Steven's suit recedes back into the bracelet, and he makes his way over to the elevator. Wait, where are we going?" Peter abandons the counter and follows the doctor into the elevator and down the lab, where his heart drops into his stomach. Steven didn't look happy or mad, but Peter felt like everything was backfiring. The sorcerer was probably going to confront Tony, and oh my god, this was a terrible idea. Now his parents were going to fight. Tony would hate him for going behind his back, and Steven would yell at him for interfering. Steven punches in the code for his lab and practically glides in and right over to Tony, who looks at him in surprise. Peter shrinks in on himself when the sorcerer grabs the engineer's face and kisses him. Kisses. The surprise was stronger than his disgust, because there wasn't any yelling. Tony pulls away with an inquisitive look. "Not that I'm complaining, but what was that about? You made me a suit." Tony's mouth opens and closes as he looks at his work table to find the bracelet gone, and then glances at Steven's wrist. Peter never thought he would see Tony Stark speechless. He assumed that if he did, it would be because of a spell Steven casted on him for at least 2 minutes of silence. It was a viable threat that he made often to both Peter and Tony. Yes? Tony responds carefully. "Thank you, it's perfect." The engineer sputters. You like it? I know the AI is male." "Wait, what AI?" Peter finds his voice. Finally. He didn't complete the activation. Tony nods and motions towards the bracelet. "Turn it on again." Steven turns on the bracelet and waits for the suit to form again. Only this time, lights flash on multiple screens pop up. "Hello, Dr. Strange." A male voice reverberates not only in his suit, but also throughout the lab, so Steven allowed the suit's mask to ebb away once again. The AI seemed to have an English accent. "My suit has an AI?" Tony laughs. "He's your personal AI. Like Peter has Karen, and I have Friday. He needs a name though." "Victor." Steven spits out almost immediately, and it makes Tony pause. Steven hardly spoke of his siblings, but he knew enough to understand the significance. Victor is connected to Karen and Friday, so as long as one of us is wearing something connected to our AI, we'll know if something happens. Tony frowns when he turns to look at Peter. "We didn't get anything from Karen when Peter was kidnapped." Peter cringes at the memory. "She wasn't connected to my watch yet? Dad fixed that as soon as he got home." "Good." Tony grins mischievously. "Don't tell the others about the suit, but wear it on our next mission. I want to freak them out." Peter mimics the engineer's expression as Steven sighs heavily and deactivates his suit. He loved Tony's design, but it wouldn't be used all the time. He figured if things got dire and if an enemy was a heavy hitter, that would be ideal time to use it. But he would humor his family in the next mission. He kind of wanted to freak the other Avengers out. They might think there was another Iron Man. "Tony?" "Yeah, babe, thank you." Tony pecks him on the cheek. "Anything for you and Peter. Except right now, Peter is in trouble." The team squawks. No way! Steven rubs Tony's back. He meant well. Tony visibly deflates, both at the touch and his boyfriend's words. I guess I can let it slide, but don't do it again. I could have been saving that for a birthday. You don't hold on to something that could save someone's life. Tony folds his arm, which reminds me, where's my sandwich? Peter perks up at the mention of food. Yeah, go. Daddy wants his lunch. Keen scampers away out of the lab to retrieve their lunch, and Steven raises an eyebrow. You know I could have used a portal and lose a couple of minutes of alone time with you? Tony mock gasps. Steven smirks. I see our time in bed means nothing to you. I was referring to the time spent less primal, Stephanie. Spidey, we can use some of your web over here. Peter webs the robot in front of him and pulls. I'm kind of busy. I got my own Terminator to deal with. They've got buttons to shut them down on the back of their neck. Quit screwing around, press it, and come and help us. Sam shouts over the comms. Peter growls. You think I don't know that? This one doesn't. So why don't you quit screwing around and come and help me? The robot yanks back hard with its webbed arm, and Peter flies towards it until it reaches out and grabs the back of his neck. The teen chokes as the robot's grip tightens, and he weakly attempts to pry the robot's hands off. But there was no success. Any attempts to call for help came out as a strangled garble, and his vision was starting to go black. This thing was going to crush his throat. Voices coming over the comm sounded far away, like he was underwater. Peter couldn't even tell who was speaking, let alone what they were saying. All he knew was he couldn't breathe. He was suffocating. Peter gasped for air when robot suddenly released him and coughs as familiar armor steps in front of him. It wasn't Iron Man though, nor was it War Machine. Clint was the first person he heard. The hell? Tony, are one of your suits going rogue? No. They're all accounted for at the compound. Peter could practically hear the grin in the billionaire's response. Then how do you explain the black suit in between your kid and the killer robot? Natasha and Steve arrive to the scene, and they both look at the armor cautiously. It took a little bit of willpower for Peter to not laugh at the arriving Avengers' faces. But it also helped that he was still concentrating on getting air into his lung. He was alert enough to shoot out a web and yank hard to disorient the robot, and the suit rushes forward to blast it with some magic. Only Peter knew it was magic, though. Anyone else would assume it was a repulsor beam. Steve slams his shield down on the chest of the toppled robot, and once he's convinced it's not getting back up, he yanks his shield out and turns towards the suit. Tony, are you sure all suits are accounted for? Tony sighs. 100%. Did it ever occur to you that maybe someone is in that suit? Nat scoffs. Not with your obsession of building them. Touché, Romanov. The rest of the Avengers join Steve and Natasha, and they all share a wary expression. When Sam steps closer with his guns out, the suit conjures a shield, making the Falcon groan. The rest of the group sighs. Oh, hell, it's just strange. Sam grumbles. Peter and Tony laugh, and as the suit mask falls back to reveal that it was indeed Steven, and the sorcerer smirks. Tony asked me to use it on the next mission. Wanda rolls her eyes. You couldn't tell us it was you? He wanted to freak you guys out. Clint glares at the laughing engineer. Dick, move, Stark. Also dangerous. Steve frowns. What if we attacked him? Tony takes a breath and waves a hand lazily. Mama Bear can take care of himself. Just for that, you have to buy pizza. Bucky smirks. I second that notion. Peter jumps to his feet, triggering a dizzy spell, and sways dangerously until Levy comes out of nowhere and steadies him. The teen mutters a thanks, and the cloak and Stephen glances at him with obvious worry. Victor, give me Peter's vitals. Just some minor bruising, Doctor. His enhanced healing is already working on fixing it, and he will be fine within an hour. The AI answers moments later. I could have told you that, Peter grumbles. Sometimes Stephen was a little too overprotective. He was going to give Tony a run for his money. Tony claps his hands together. Spider Baby wants pizza? If you want to eat, better get to the tower. Everyone scatters immediately. Peter's appetite was no joke, and they all knew Tony and Stephen would not hold the boy back. So some flew off while the other packed into the Quinjet and took off, leaving the family trio behind. Peter laughs at the group's serious departure until he coughs, prompting Tony to walk over and scoop the boy up into his arm without a word. Peter didn't even complain. Swinging to the tower in his condition would kill his lung. Levy wraps around Stephen's shoulder after the sorcerer's new suit crawls back into the bracelet. Steve and Bucky are still enhanced. The threat affects Peter just as much as it does them. Tony snorts. No, it doesn't. I'll buy my kid more pizza, but the others are on their own. Our kid. Just open a portal, Mama Bear. Our Spider Baby will start fussing soon if he doesn't eat. Peter glares up at Tony. I will go dead weight on you. Tony looks at Stephen and motions to Peter with his head. See? Fussy. Stephen chuckles and opens a portal to the tower's common room. They step through and the Avengers are already eating. Peter scrambles out of Tony's hold and hops onto the island counter, crosses his leg, and grabs the entire box. He barely waited long enough for his suit to store himself before he started eating. His parents were tempted to control his eating, the speed at least. Stephen was just waiting for the day Peter would choke. Slow down, Underoos. Tony picks up a few slices for himself and Stephen and hands one of the plates to the sorcerer. Sorry for yelling at you earlier, kid. Sam gently nudges Peter's shoulder. No big deal. You didn't know. Scott groans loudly. Are we gonna pretend we didn't see Strange acting badass? I'm not gonna lie. If I was interested in guys, I would definitely want some of that. Stephen chokes on his pizza and Peter makes a face. Dude. Tony chucks a cheese packet at Scott. Mama Bear is mine. I'm not sharing. Stephen sighs. Remind me why I left the sanctum? The Avengers look at each other and then in the Spiderling's direction. Peter. Unanimously. The teen looks up from his phone and pauses mid-chew. What?